Have you ever wondered how a single heist could change everything? Imagine the shock when a bank robbery is so meticulously planned that it leaves law enforcement scrambling for answers. From hostage situations to millions of pounds vanishing without a trace, these daring heists push the boundaries of what we think is possible. In today's video, we're diving into one of the most audacious robberies in UK history, the Northern Bank heist. You won't believe how these criminals pulled it off, and even more shockingly, how they got away with it. Stay tuned as we break down every jaw-dropping detail of this unimaginable crime, the perfect hostage crime. It starts with a knock at the door. Kevin Kmalin, a manager at Northern Bank, opens the door and finds two men dressed in police uniforms. They tell him that there's been a family emergency and he needs to come with them to identify a body. Completely unaware, Kevin steps outside. Then, in an instant, a gun is pressed against his head. The situation takes a dark turn. Meanwhile, 20 miles away, Chris Ward, another employee at Northern Bank, is facing a similar fate. His family is held hostage while the criminals, in an almost cinematic twist, manipulate Chris and Kevin into becoming part of a heist they never could have imagined. For 24 hours, they are pawns in a terrifying game of control, as their families are used as leverage. But what's even more chilling is that, during this time, the two men will walk into the very bank they work at, acting like everything is normal. No one, not even their co-workers, would suspect that they were involved in what would later become the largest bank heist in UK history. It's a mind-bending, chilling plot, and it all begins with a phone call, a gun, and a lie. The plan, how it all comes together. This wasn't just any robbery. This was an intricately planned operation. A tiger kidnapping, which is exactly what it sounds like, a two-pronged attack. First, the criminals kidnap a victim, and then they force that person to help them carry out a crime. It was a well-known tactic during the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and it was about to be used to perfection. Kevin and Chris were the key holders for the vault the next day, by sheer coincidence, or maybe it was just fate. The criminals knew that Northern Bank had a specific security measure in place. The vault could only be unlocked by two people, and those key holders changed every week. What the robbers didn't realize, though, was how much more they were about to control. They began to lay out their instructions. Go to work, act normal, don't raise any alarms. And while that sounds like something anyone could do, the stakes were anything but normal. Chris and Kevin had to follow these steps down to the last detail, because if they didn't, their families would pay the ultimate price. The tension was thick, and the criminals were in complete control. The plan was meticulously organized, and now, Chris and Kevin were about to step into the biggest heist of their lives. Executing the heist, Stage 1. By the time Chris and Kevin entered the bank on the morning of the heist, they were already on edge, knowing full well that their families' lives were in the hands of criminals. The heist was scheduled for 5 p.m. But before they could make their move, they had to call the captors 3 times, each call a reminder of the grave consequences that awaited if anything went wrong. It's surreal to think about how easily they slipped into the routine of the day. They walked into the bank, sat at their desks, and acted like everything was normal. But with each passing hour, the weight of the situation grew heavier. They knew that at exactly 5 p.m., they would need to execute the plan flawlessly or risk everything. When the time came, Chris walked into the vault with £1 million in mind. He grabbed the cash, stuffed it into the bag, and calmly walked out of the vault. With everything in place, he took the money to the bus stop as instructed. He set it down, and just like that, a man appeared from nowhere, took the bag, and disappeared. It was flawless. But the heist stage wasn't the end of the heist. It was just the beginning of what would turn out to be a multi-stage operation. As Chris returned to the bank, his phone rang. The robbers weren't done. They were coming back for more. Chris could feel the knot in his stomach tighten. He knew this heist had only just started, and they were about to take everything to another level. Big action, the second stage. To truly appreciate what was happening, we need to understand the way the bank's cash was handled. The Northern Bank had a specific delivery system for its cash, a single entrance at the back of the bank where all the money came in and out. The security firm, Secura, was the only one allowed to transport the money. Here's where things get even more daring. The criminals knew that, to move the cash without being detected, they had to swap the security seals on the boxes. green boxes were normally filled with cash, but once the robbers swapped the seals, the boxes appeared empty, containing nothing but waste paper. Kevin and Chris were tasked with moving these boxes out of the vault and into a waiting van. But there was one big problem. Only secure vans were allowed to drive into the alley behind the bank, and they were driven by verified employees. Kevin, using his position as the manager, was told he needed to make this happen. No matter the obstacle, the gang knew that they could count on Kevin to deliver. The final stages, a van full of cash. In an unbelievable twist, the criminals were not done with the heist, they wanted more. When the van arrived to collect the boxes, it was just the beginning of the final stage. This time, there were no green boxes to hide the cash, only loose, unprotected banknotes stuffed into large black bags. It was now or never. Chris and Kevin scrambled to load the bags of cash into the van, while the security guard, Billy, stood by unsuspectingly. With every step, the tension mounted. One wrong move, and they would be caught. But Billy trusted Kevin, and the loading process went smoothly. One by one, the robbers took the bags, loaded them into the van, and drove away without leaving a trace. It was all happening so fast, but it seemed to go off without a hitch. At this point, Kevin and Chris had done their part. They raised the alarm, pretending as if everything had gone according to the normal routine. They left the bank, completely unaware that the authorities were just starting to catch on. Investigation and aftermath. After the heist, the police were immediately notified that something was off. They discovered the massive hole in the bank's security and launched an investigation. The hunt for the robbers began, and the authorities made quick arrests, including men tied to known criminal groups. But despite all the arrests, the investigation didn't lead anywhere substantial. When the authorities turned to Kevin Mullen, they found no direct evidence linking him to the crime. And then, when they questioned Chris Ward, the story didn't add up. The case quickly hit a dead end. The robbers get away. What makes this heist even more incredible is that, to this day, no one has been convicted of the robbery. The money, £26.5 million, has never been recovered. Even with all the leads and arrests, the robbers are still out there, living free. The Northern Bank heist remains one of the most mind-blowing, daring heists ever committed. The criminals used inside knowledge, perfectly timed moves, and a deep understanding of the bank's operations to pull it off. The fact that they got away with it, with no evidence and no arrests, is something out of a movie script. But it's all too real. And that's the unbelievable story of the Northern Bank heist. A crime so daring, it still leaves authorities shaking their heads. If you thought this story was wild, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with friends, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a thrilling tale like this. Stay tuned for more jaw-dropping stories in our next video. See you next time.